can you take a plane like this and turn it into a stack of parts like that? Well, flying into a tree will do it. I'm the expert, you know. Know all about such things. Yeah, it's a bit of a long explanation, and really a lot of unanswered questions, but I think basically pilot error. I allowed it to unconsciously go into a side slip, and not realizing what I was doing, just flew it into the tree. But we got it down with some help from guys in the club, thank you. And now we're getting it back together. So have a look at what's going on. What do you do when your nice new plane decides to land in a tree? Well, naturally you get some PVC pipe hooked together, and you know, get great big long pieces, and you poke up in the tree. But anyway, you knock it around until finally it comes down. Okay, in this particular case, it took several days. And this, by the way, was the nice new MX2 that we did the maiden flight with. And on the day of this crash, it was flying beautifully. I mean, it was flying smooth and well in control and all of that. And I don't have any good explanations for why this thing flew into a tree. I won't eliminate the possibility of some error on the part of the pilot, who will remain unnamed, even though you know who he is. But regardless of any of that, the question is, what do we do? So, fortunately, with a tree type thing, the tree has lots of light branches that the plane goes through before it gets to the heavy branches. So while we have a few good knocks, such as this one right here, you know, most of the damage is superficial. And then things like this, that's from, well, that might be a branch that hit it. I certainly did a lot of poking around on the nose, a lot of damage up here from the pipe pushing on there, trying to push it back off of the branches and get it out. And of course, test pilot, you know, that's a very dangerous job, you know. I don't think any of you would volunteer to be a test pilot in one of my planes. But at any rate, we're going to go ahead and fix this. We've got a break here in the foam that is going to be a bit tricky because it's all together, but we need to get some glue in there because in two places here it's pretty well broken through, and it's right close to where we got our spar support. And we'll have to do a lot of looking at this, just pulling around on it, looking for places where the paint is broken off, and seeing what it is like underneath there. But by and large, it's going to be a cosmetic job. On the tail, it sure looks like I didn't pin these hinges on the rudder. There are definitely pins in the elevator where I put the hinges in. But I can't imagine not having pinned that, but I certainly don't feel anything and I don't see anything, so that might be another, RC Jim brain fade. It does happen. I'm human, and perhaps a little bit more human than you guys. You know, you guys don't make mistakes like that, I'm sure. But anyway, since I do make mistakes, I get to show you how to fix the mistakes. So let's get into it and be pretty straightforward. Okay, now for those of you that have been watching the videos on the build of this plane, I've actually got two of these MX2s. This one here is the second one. The first one is sitting up there. Yeah, that's the first one that I got. And this is the second one. Now what happened along the way is that there was a warranty claim. This one had a problem with the motor, and that's this motor right here. And it had some sort of imbalance in it, and this thing just tore apart the nose of the plane. And there was also a fault in the rudder on the hinge was broken loose. And later on I noticed that actually in the main wing one of the hinges was breaking loose. end result of that was that they sent me a brand new plane. So I assembled the new plane, and that video that you have online right now is actually me putting together the second one. The first one, I lost some footage and things like that, so I replaced it with the second one. Plus I learned a few things with the first one that I wanted to show in doing the second one. Okay, so we've got hinges that are broken loose at the top. We've got a hinge that's in here, and we've got a rudder in there. So what we're going to do is do our best to get the rudder. We got a tail wheel in the rudder. So we're going to do our best to get these things off. When the screws get glue on them, sometimes they get sort of stuck in one sort of position and don't want to come out from there, so they need a little bit of uplift on them as you turn them. And eventually you might have to grab them with some needle nose or something to pull them out. Okay, so let's see if we can break this loose. Yeah, this one I did take the paint off of it. And for being the less strong glue, it holds pretty well. It's a bit of a challenge in that we got two ends to try and get up. Okay, there it goes. Okay, we'll get the control linkage taken care of. So that held on pretty well. Okay, so now we'll take loose the elevator. We're going to go ahead and pull this right out so that we can get it attached in there properly. So at any rate, as you think about Hobbyking, I've got two of their planes. I've got a Bixler 2 sailplane, and I've got this. Both of them, I would say, are in the low-cost end of the spectrum, but they both fly really well and are great value for the money, I reckon. You know, the Bixler, you know, of course, Australian dollars is going to be different than US dollars and all of that, but one of the least expensive airplanes that I've ever, or radio-controlled planes that I've ever purchased, and flies really nice. My thread locker is keeping this from coming out properly. At least it hasn't affected the ball, and it has helped to hold it in place. Okay, so now we want to get this out. That's interesting. That I'd removed the paint from it. This is that Bob Smith glue that I was telling you about. But that just came right out. Wasn't doing much of anything, so that's a bit of an issue, I guess. But nonetheless, allows us to do this. You can see where I've removed the paint there. We've got the hinges on this control surface, and they all look to be fine. They're all pinned in place. As the paint is not sticking, whether it's their paint or my paint. Either one is coming loose. I'm pleased with this paint here is a mixture of acrylic and Mod Podge. And the Mod Podge gives it that resilient sort of nature to it. So, you know, you've got that rubbery sort of feel to it. So it still has an issue with regard to sticking onto this foam. This foam just is such it doesn't like paint. I suppose we could try giving it a light sand the next time before we put anything on it. But in terms of the nature of this paint to have that much stretch, you know, to be able to move with things, that is good. Whereas with the paint that they put on, when you have any sort of point where the thing stretches, where stuff is bending, I guess it hung on there okay. But typically it's going to crack or break or peel or whatever. So I think we'll just go ahead and glue this on. With the construction of the plane, it's molded in two halves. So the two halves go right on through here. So in this vertical fin, it'll be hollow in the middle, but the two halves come together at the end. So it's a little bit of a problem with regard to the hinges. You can see the hinges all held on the rudder itself, but where you got these two halves that have come together with the slots that they provided, they haven't held. I do have some things that are sticking there. Yeah, it's got some epoxy that didn't get cleaned off well enough that is catching. And of course we're turning it farther than what it could turn in the airplane. As I'm turning this, I got something hitting, and I can see the foam moving right here, that end of the hinge. So there'd be something up there that's catching as it goes around, and it seems to be down in there where I can't get at it. It's got good movement for the amount that it's going to move in the plane. It's just when it gets way over there that there's a little bit of epoxy sticking out someplace on the edge of the hinge that's catching on something. There we go. As I'm cleaning this up, I'm seeing something of concern here. It's similar to what I saw in my Dauntless dive bomber. That is, this bottom hinge was definitely stuck on good. You know, we had to yank it out to get it out and all of that, so that was attached well. This one is kind of marginal as I'm looking at it and getting it to where the light is reflecting on it. It's not all shiny, but it's hard to say whether it was over here. There's definitely a section in the middle where it wasn't stuck. It's just perfectly shiny, you know, with little undulations like glue just was on there but not attached to anything. And then the other part, it's hard to say whether it was attached to something or there just wasn't much glue on it. And the glue certainly didn't get pushed down all the way to the end of the hinge, close to where the pin is. You know, when I apply it, and I don't know if you can see it on the video or not, but the glue has come up halfway between those two sets of holes. The glue is up halfway, but it hasn't pushed down into here. So the fact that it was still attached at the bottom, I'd say you still had rudder control and all of that, but certainly it would be a concern whether it had anything to do with this crash or not, maybe not. But in terms of potential, watch out for that. This is not, these two hinges are not attached very well, and they're attached really good into the part that where I made the slots, but into this, and come to think of it, I made the slot for this bottom one. I had to lower it in order to miss the control arm. But where they've made the slots, just in their mold, they've put a little bit of an indentation. And I think they would have been better just to not have any indentation there and just let us cut one right on the join. But those are really big gaps in there to put a hinge into. So the question will be, and getting them back in there, do I use something like Gorilla Glue that will expand and fill it up? Or do I put in lots of epoxy? Maybe shove a lot of epoxy in there before I even put the hinge in. The issue with Gorilla Glue is it will ooze out, and I'll have to try to clean it up, you know, as we go. Well, I have worked out what I'm going to do here. It's going to be a hybrid solution. I'm going to use Gorilla Glue, put into these slots, clamp these together. I notice it's coming loose here on the end. So most of that, yeah, it's, you know, right through that needs some help. And in these slots and behind the slots, it's really wide open. So I need to fill in that area. But if I do that with Gorilla Glue, tape over it, let that cure, then after it's cured, then I cut new slots in there. That's going to do the job. I kind of like this thing standing on its nose when I do this. It's all solid up there. This Gorilla Glue will tend to drip down in there, but I'm not going to depend on that. I'll use an old blade to just coax her in there. Okay, I've got it worked in there nicely, but I am going to add a little bit more, and then I'll put tape over top of it. The tape will force it to expand together more tightly with smaller bubbles. If you let it just stay free, it will expand way out with very large bubbles. So it's going to be stronger if you can constrain it into a particular area. And this will tend to force it down inside and help glue the two halves together as well. We note that anytime you use tape on this thing, that it tends to take off paint. I'm going to use the wide tape to try and make sure that I can seal it in there the best I can. And in terms of paint, I'll just be careful when I take it off. But I got a lot of stickers I got to glue back on anyway, so I'm not terribly worried. Want to get it as tight as we can across the areas where we've glued it. All leak down inside the plane. I think I'll turn it back the other way, up with the tail down, after I get this tape on there, to make sure this much as possible stays down near the hinge. Squeezing together this bottom part because it was coming loose. A little bit of a clamping with the tape is what's happening. And this is mainly thinking about the clamping force coming up this way, giving tension across there and sticking it up that way. Okay, so now we're going to turn it this way and hang it like that, so any excess glue will be down against the area where the hinges are. And of course that will gradually fill up with foam. Well, looking at our glue job here, having removed the tape, did exactly what we wanted on these, so we'll be able to slit those. Just sighting down it, I see that this tail has actually got a bit of a kink in it. Not quite sure how that happened. But anyway, that'll be okay. But interesting enough, it filled up this bit in here with the glue. I think that probably came into the inside of it and filled up that cavity and came out the top, I guess. Doesn't look like it came around this way, so it's come up through the screw holes into there, which is probably a good indication as far as saying that it's helping to glue together the cavity. So we need to remove this glue. Okay, looking at these bricks right here, a couple of different ways to do it. One is put a bit of a hole in the middle, put Gorilla Glue in there, tape it up all around, let the Gorilla Glue expand through. Another is to use a Gorilla Glue and just use a knife to push it in rather than a big hole in the middle. Push it in all over, but you know, it would mess up the brake a little bit. The other thing would be to try some foam safe CA that would go right down into there. Another one is use white glue that would go right down into there. But I'm a Gorilla Glue fan for a lot of this foam stuff. Kind of creates its own foam. So what I want to do first off is get the tape off that's going to come off so that we can stick down tape around it to seal it off. So that is pretty easily done with this foam not particularly liking paint. I see it's broken loose from this center part here too. So we need to get glue down into there, down into there and around here, and then across here. And we got our bolt for the wing going through there. The other side is nice and solid. I think I'm just going to poke it down into the crack the best I can and tape it up. We'll probably utilize some barbecue skewers for reinforcing through this. Okay, let's work through that one nicely. This one's a little bit more problematic. And the bit down inside here around this circular bit, broken along the inside of that. Oh, there you can see it through here. You can actually see the glue coming through there. So that's good. Okay, so that glue's getting in there where it needs to be. Skewers, I think I'll do the tape first, and then I'll look at the skewers. Okay, with the tape again, our objective is to force the glue to go through the various joins and things that it needs to. Should have got this earlier. We got glue on it now, so it's not going to come off so easily. Okay. Okay. We want this pulled together, so I'm holding it up there, pulling it nice and taut down here, sticking it down along the way. Do it on both sides. And the inside bit is a bit of a problem as far as trying to contain the glue. It's going to want to drip down. Just push it in there the best we can. And a similar thing, this bit here, it can't really stick on much of anything, but it can at least have glue there, or tape there, to help keep it from dripping. One in here someplace, one up there. That's going to be really hard to do anything with. We will try. Okay, that just come out just now right there. So we will get some glue on it. Okay, that's about it right there. Okay, generally with this what we'll do is we'll just let the glue harden up and cure, and then we'll cut off the barbecue skewer where it's sticking out. It's going to help at least this break here, and probably isn't going to do much of anything for that one. So one there and one about there, and here someplace. Okay, we'll try that. Do a second one from about here. Okay, that one went that far, so that's right through that area. Now I got a bit of patching up here to do. I think I'll use a Gorilla Glue for that as well. We'll get off some of the paint. So we'll use some Gorilla Glue in here. When we sand it off, it'll leave bubbles, and then we fill the bubbles with the lightweight filler. The Gorilla Glue is far better than using the lightweight filler in these deep cuts, and it is a glue, and it'll hold it together and have some strength. And give a pretty similar consistency to the actual foam with its bubbles and stuff that it develops. So the nose has been dug into rather seriously. That was me whacking it with a pipe that did most of that. As usual, RC Jim is the culprit for a lot of this stuff. As much as possible, we'd like to have all of the surface wetted, because that ensures that it's going to adhere well. If it's just simply the foam pushing up against it, if the foam is starting to dry off on the outside edges before it gets there, then it's not going to stick as well. Okay, and here it'd be nice if I could have a little bit more of the right contour. So it's sticking out a little bit far there. But I think that'll do all right. Through this area it's going to help get that stuff in there. I'm concerned that as I look down the tail, this top part is bent a little bit that way. So I probably should have done this before or at the time that I put on the Gorilla Glue. But what I'm going to do right now is to clamp it in position in the hope that some of that glue in there is not yet fully cured. So I'm going to leave it like that, and hopefully it'll take that set and stay put. Okay, for something like this, it's had a bit of a bend in it. You can just try and bend it back the opposite way and see if it'll spring back, but it's got no strength to it. So I'm going to put some Gorilla Glue on it. I'm going to tape it up, and then I'm going to clamp it with 2 bits of wood to make it stay put. I'm making good use of our Gorilla Glue today. Some days I'm into an epoxy mood, and therefore taking an epoxy mode. And some days it's a Gorilla Glue. But usually for the really serious, mangled up type repairs, Gorilla Glue is the way to go. But there are times that I'll use epoxy with the skewers and stuff, so yeah, it's hard to say which way is the absolute best. It probably depends on what it is that you're working with. And I'm just going to put these down here like so. And get the clamp on there. Okay. And now this little bit here. Okay, we've got all of our bits all glued up and taped up and clamped and all of that kind of thing. Of course, what we've done is any place where we've had a major sort of problem, we put a bit of Gorilla Glue on there. We use a tape to confine it, to hold it in place, and then in some cases have some sort of clamping to keep it straight. Where we've got dings in the leading edge, we're largely depending on the tape to hold it in place. And there's a great big hole under that one, so that'll be interesting to see how that fills out with a Gorilla Glue as it expands. Got some barbecue skewers in places. Can already see this is done earlier, and you can see how it's pushed out and it's bubbling out there. That will try to, keep it in there as much as it can, but it'll come out a bit depending on how much glue we've used. And where it comes out, we can sand it. When we sand it, it'll leave bubbles, but the bubbles can be filled with a lightweight filler. So all of that will be okay. Some cases it's just a little thing. There you can see where some of the glue is oozing out. That's okay. Like I say, we can carve that off quite easily. So we'll let that cure overnight, and we will see what it looks like tomorrow. Well, the moment of truth. Tiny bit straighter. And actually it's going to be quite all right. Down here, where the old hinge was about there. And just means that it'll be just a teensy tiny bit over, which looking at the angles of the sides is pretty well the middle anyway. So that's going to be fine. And now for the other bits. Nice and solid. Okay, that is certainly fixed, and we don't need any rod through that. All it's got to do is hold itself together, and it's certainly going to do that. And we will clean this out and see if we can find the control horn for it. Okay, that'll just get sanded down a bit with a little bit of filler added here and there. If there are any bits of tape that can't come off, they can be sanded off. Usually by picking away at the little individual bits you can get it. Where it's on the glue does like to stick to it. Even though it does have adhesive on it. Okay. That one could have used a little bit more glue in it, but that'll be all right. And now for the fuselage. Well, the repair is progressing well. This is where we had that huge big gouge out of the front of the wing, and that tape has just helped that to conform quite nicely in there. We'll be doing a bit of sanding on all of these to get them nice, and a little bit of filler here and there, but that's all good. One thing I was noticing as I was pulling off paint is that on the underside of the wing, it's actually got foam sheet in there, and the paint sticks really good on that. This is where I added the white stripe that was, separate stick-on stuff. But putting ordinary tape on there and pulling it off, the paint doesn't come off there. It does come off here. And related to that, I decided that what I'm going to do is I'm going to strip the whole plane as far as paint goes. I'm going to repaint it with a different color scheme. I've pulled off all of the stickers, and I've got them sandwiched between a couple pieces of cardboard just in case I need to use them for the other plane, or I want to revert to using those on this plane, whatever the case might be. But we're going to get this looking pretty good, and by taking it right down to the foam, I'll then be able to lightly sand this foam with a very fine sandpaper, and hopefully get a surface on there that paint will stick to. So right now, it's a beautiful finish, but it's so silky smooth that paint just can't stick to it. So it needs to get roughed up a little bit. Our pilot is got his head back on. He's happy, and I'm happy that things are progressing along here. So with the other plane up in the rafters, and this one progressing well, we're going to bid you adieu, and what you'll want to do is make sure that you subscribe so that you can keep track of these things and follow the progress along the way. And then, of course, I'll be putting a link to another video over on the other side there that you can track either what's happened before or after, depending on when you click on it. Well, I'm RC Jim signing off. You have a great day. Enjoy your flying and repairing.